Hello, everyone. My name's Deborah Cannon, and I'm a member of the Clallam County League of Women Voters. Whenever there are elections, the League organizes and sponsors candidate forums for positions specific to local Clallam County and Washington State. My role today is to moderate the candidate forum for the position of Clallam County Commissioner, District Number 2. There are three candidates for this August 6th election: Kate Dexter, Randy Johnson, and Anders Tronhakabo. Thank you to these three for taking time to participate and being willing to act in the role of public servant. For our audience listening live, a warm welcome. We appreciate you taking the time to listen and be an informed voter. Voting is the cornerstone of our democracy. Many league volunteers are working to keep things running as smoothly as possible. A thank you to them also. This forum is also being recorded. A special thank you to Sarah from the North Olympic Library System, who's instrumental in making this happen. Links will be posted on the League website, www.lwvla.org, within the next few days. We encourage you to let your friends know of this timely information. It can be viewed in full or by topic as it's indexed. Over the past month, we've received a lot of questions, thoughtful questions from the community. Tonight, those questions are your questions. We thank everyone who took the time to submit them, and we have had many people who've submitted similar questions, so we have compiled those and consolidated them so we can cover as many questions as possible on a wide range of topics in the time we have available. Topics to be covered include role of the county commissioner, affordable housing, natural resource policy, and economics and development. Before we began this forum, we made sure that all the candidates were able to see the timer in our upper left-hand corner. So now we would like to put that to use. Each candidate will have a 2-minute opening statement in alphabetical order. After that, we'll move to the questions portion, where each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer, alternating on who will answer first. At the end of the forum, each candidate will give a 2-minute closing statement. We'll now start with the candidate's opening statement. Please tell us why you're running for the Clallam County Commissioner position, what your qualifications are for serving, and what your goals are while in office at a minimum. Kate Dexter will go first. You have 2 minutes.
Right, thank you. First, thank you to the League for hosting this event, and I do appreciate it being virtual. I think that does give a lot of people an opportunity to participate who might not otherwise have. I've been honored to serve the people of Port Angeles on the City Council for the last 7 years, including the last 4.5 as mayor. I have served as mayor during some difficult times for Port Angeles, including through the pandemic, where the city led with policies to help struggling households stay in their homes and help businesses be ready to reopen. And throughout this process, I've provided a space for respectful discourse where everyone has the opportunity to speak and be heard. As mayor, I've also had the privilege of representing Port Angeles at both the state and national level, and developed strong partnerships with local governments, nonprofits, and community partners like the Coast Guard. I will bring my strong leadership experience and partnership building skills to the County Commission and make sure that everyone has a voice and feels respected and valued in our government. There are many big issues that Clallam County is facing, and I'm looking forward to working on them at the county level, including increasing housing stock countywide, enhancing economic development, addressing the child care shortage, responding to the effects of climate change, supporting public safety, ongoing infrastructure projects, and ongoing revenue issues with ever increasing costs and mandates from the state. While I've worked on all of these issues at the city level, it's clear that more work at the county level is needed in order to adequately address them and increase the quality of life for all in Clallam County. I was born and raised in Washington State and live with my 2 sons in Port Angeles. I have a graduate degree in public administration from the University of Washington and currently work as the clinical outreach and accreditation coordinator for the nursing program at Peninsula College. I happen to serve on a number of local boards and committees, including Clallam County Law and Justice, Faro Marine Life Center, Utility Advisory Committee, MRSC. I'll tell you what that means in my closing. And I was the team mom of my son's baseball team. I look forward to doing this work on a full-time basis and appreciate your opportunity to be heard tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. We'll move on to Randy Johnson.
Yes, thank you. My name's Randy Johnson. Uh-oh. I'm back, sorry. Hit the wrong button, so apologize. Again, my name's Randy Johnson, and I've been honored to represent you for the last 7.5 years as your county commissioner. First, a little bit about my background. I grew up in Los Angeles in LA City High School. I went off to the University of South and Sewanee, Tennessee, because I got a scholarship there and therefore didn't go to Berkeley. During the entirety of that time, I worked as a smoke jumper to make money for my to pay for college. After that, and after graduate school, I entered into the armed forces. I left Vietnam as a captain, company commander, and went right from there to the Harvard Business School. I graduated after 2 years and went right from there to New York City to work. And from New York City, I went to Florida. Then I went to Vancouver, BC, and then back to New York City. And I said I had enough of this. So after that experience, I helped start a company, local company here called Green Crow. And I was fortunate enough to be the president and CEO of that company for 30 years. It was mostly a family-owned company, but I did own a little bit of it. And we grew and grew and grew, and we were in 4 different states and 5 different foreign countries. And I was pleased to have been participating in that company as it continued to expand. From there, I ran for county commissioner in 2016, was elected in 2017. And little did I know that COVID would come about. And lo and behold, I spent a couple years working with a multitude of businesses, the food banks, and everyone else. I think we all went through a very, very difficult time. And I'm glad to say most of those activities were successful, and we helped empower 600 plus companies in that period of time to hopefully make sure that they survived at the other end of or whenever COVID was going to end. Finally, my priorities continue to be similar to Kate's, but continue to work on those: housing, childcare, veteran services, conservation futures, and fiscal integrity for the county. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. We'll move on to Anders.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Anders Trondhalkebo, and that's a Norwegian name, so you can pick up on that. My experience in coming to be considered for this job is, I think, listening to the constituents is the #1 job of a commissioner. Some people are closely in touch with the functions of the various departments. The Road and Public Works Department is the #1 financial item in the county. The #2 is the Sheriff's Department. I was asked at a previous forum what I would do with a windfall of money, and in thinking about that, I come to the conclusion that I should have said that our sheriffs and 911 dispatchers should have a retention bonus so that they're trained and ready to do the jobs that they're hired for. Our sheriff's people should be trained to intervene and de-escalate any crisis situations. My previous experience in leadership has been with the Red Cross and with Habitat in King County. I also served with a statewide group, People for Fair Taxes. I was fortunate enough to be involved with the ending of the Midway Metals problem that we had along the highway, and I count that as an experience serving the people of Clallam County. Thank you.
Thank you, all 3. We'll move on to specific questions, and this first group will deal with the role of the county commissioner. Question #1, how do the decisions commissioners make affect the day-to-day lives of people living in the county? We'll start with Randy Johnson.
Affect the daily lives, I'm sorry.
Now, how do the decisions commissioners make affect the day-to-day lives of people living in the county?
in multitudes of ways. Obviously, this is already highlighted. The county maintains 500 miles of roads, so everyone is involved in roads in innumerable ways. When we think about the county commissioner, and again, how do we continue to fund that? The issue of county commissioner, let me back up. I probably started a little bit too quickly. Please recognize that the county commissioner has a legislative function as well as the executive function. However, there are a multitude of other entities that are also elected, and again, they manage that. I could talk about obviously helping to make sure that funding is appropriate for our sheriff's department, and actually that does matter very much, but again, the sheriff is in charge of that. Our Department of Community Development has a lot of things, whether it's related to permits and certainly code enforcement and all those things, and they're very important. But again, the person responsible for that is, of course, the DCD director. What the county commissioner is very important about or involved in is making sure that all of us work together. So if we're talking about our DCD director, and we're talking about those issues of like code enforcement, we want to make sure our prosecuting attorney is involved. We want to make sure the DC director is involved. We want to make sure that, of course, our health and human services with septics is involved, et cetera. So it's coordinating everyone. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Anders, could you respond next, please?
The county should be run like a well-oiled machine. The commissioners do not make a lot of the day-to-day decisions, but their work through the financial allotments and the non-financial is to be the policy ear to the constituents. We should be good listeners. The leadership of the county should be with the citizens, not with the commission. There are, as Randy suggested, a number of departments that have elected leaders. We should support them in their work, and at the same time, they should be accountable to the citizens through the commissioners. So that's my statement. Thank you.
Kate?
Thank you. Certainly Randy hit on a big one, which is roads. That is interestingly spelled out in a number of places as a key issue, a key place where county commissioners are responsible for. I just find that interesting as a specifically called out. Certainly the way the county commissioners allocate the budget has potential impacts on everyday lives. The county commissioners have the role and responsibility of passing both civil and criminal resolutions and ordinances, which could certainly impact people's daily lives. And I think while Randy touched on collaboration internal to the county, I also think that county commissioners can have a really significant impact on the day-to-day lives of people in our communities when we collaborate outside of the organization, outside the government walls and into the community. And I think we certainly see that on occasion, or we see that regularly. And I think it's something that I'm excited about potentially doing in this role. But I think being aware of what's happening, keeping tabs on what's happening in the community, and being responsive. And I also think lastly, a role that the county commissioners can play that is really important for the day-to-day lives of our community is advocacy at both the state and federal level. As rules are changed, as policies are considered at the state level, thinking through how those will impact residents and advocating appropriately.
Thank you. Some of you touched on this a little bit, but we have a specific question regarding what steps you would take to engage with and listen to the concerns of all county residents and encourage participation from all without regard to their political viewpoints. Let's start with Anders.
Could you repeat that for me, please?
Yes. What steps would you take to engage with and listen to the concerns of all county residents and encourage participation from all without regard to their political viewpoints?
I would work on the technical side to make sure that people at home can participate in the commissioner's work. And the meetings themselves, the county commission meetings, are not set up right now to be an exchange between the members of the public, but rather a listening post for the commissioners. I don't know if that can be changed, but I think that should be explored. I have attended some of the meetings of the commissioners, and I do like what I see. The commissioners are very well informed, need to stay well informed about things like serving the unhoused and minorities in the county. And so if we take a long range view of the jobs of the commissioners, that should serve us in environmental concerns, in financial concerns, and in all the things that the county does. So like I say, I'd like to see it handled as a well-oiled machine, serving the people at all times. You can't please all of the people, but you can please most of them, I hope.
Okay, thank you, Anders. Kate?
I couldn't hear Anders very well, and I'm now understanding that it's on my side. So I'm going to answer this question, and then during the next question, hope that I can get that sorted out. I think certainly ensuring that meetings are accessible to people. We went to a hybrid meeting model after COVID and have maintained the online option, which I really appreciate. And, you know, everyone's learning as they go, but I've tried to join county meetings before, and it's really hard to hear the way they've got it set up. So I would tweak that a little bit, I think, for folks who wanted to join online. I also think, given particularly that the county business is often done during the workday, it is challenging. I'm turning off my video in case that helps. I also think, given that the commissioners do their work primarily, their meetings and such during the day, not that they don't attend evening meetings, but making sure that as a group we're reaching out to community groups and potentially doing some outreach events or just open house town hall type things where we can just go and hear from people. I think for some people, as a mayor and managing public comment, it's clear to me that for some people, we all know each other and we're comfortable with each other, but it can be really nerve-wracking for people to come and speak at a meeting. And so I think giving people the opportunity to do that in a less formal way is important. And not everyone likes to email. So that's something that I think we could consider doing.
Thank you, Kate. Randy, your thoughts?
I'm going to jump on that phone. Sorry to interrupt. I'm going to jump on that phone number and see if I can impact my audio a little bit. So give me just 1 second.
Can you hear me, Randy?
Yes, now I can hear you fine.
Okay. Your thoughts on the question?
Okay, so you want me to answer now? Okay.
Yes, please.
So again, I think it's critically important that we have input from all of our county residents. As I think Anders said, not everyone's going to agree with us, but people need to understand what our thought process is and how we arrived at whatever conclusion that is. How does one do that? I think all of us, at least I know my fellow county commissioners, and let me underline the fact that all three of us can't meet together very easily without, of course, posting that, because that could be considered a quorum. But therefore, what are we involved in? Well, in my case, of course, I'm in the Port Angeles Chamber of Commerce. I'm in Economic Development Council. I'm involved in multitudes of other activities at the Y or whatever, and we get input from people in almost all of those, based on different kinds of viewpoints, and I appreciate that, and that's very necessary. The other way to also get that input, and I've got to emphasize the fact I don't know why a county commissioners is a D or an R. I think we're the closest one to where the rubber hits the road that I can imagine. And so I never look at anything as a D or an R because I'm running as an independent. But again, I just think it's critical that we put groups together, and I'll just give you a quick example. Our Housing Solutions Committee consists of the private sector, the public sector, and everyone else involved in housing. And therefore, you get input from everyone. And I think whatever committee it is, that's how the way one needs to work. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Our next question relates to the Clallam County Charter. As you know, the county is governed by a charter document. The document is up for review in 2025. That's by a commission made up of citizens that will be elected this November. How can the county commissioner best support the review process? Kate, you're up next, but can you hear me okay? Randy, would you like to go ahead and respond to this first? We'll loop back to Kate.
Again, I think the question is how to support the Charter Review Commission. Is that correct?
That is correct.
I think I would give an example. First of all, we're one of, I think, 7 charter counties, so that gives us an input. And the Charter Review Commission, of course, is the one that recommended the DCD director, the only DCD director in the entire country that's elected. So obviously, they have a very important place. What I would hope that the Charter Review Commission does, and the example I would give is that we used to not have a chief financial officer in the county. So you could not actually get in our administrator had 17 direct reports and was also supposed to keep the books. Good luck. I mean, doesn't make any sense. And so we had that issue come up with the charter review. And again, it's important that they understand what's lacking, where we could have some additional help, and their input might not be a direct answer. And I'll give back to the code enforcement issue, but they give the impetus many times to put things in place, such as, again, a code enforcement committee that can work on not only the issues that one has, but also the metrics that one needs to keep to let everyone know what's going on. And again, I hope you've got 15 members of the Charter Review coming on, and I hope they listen to all the different electeds within the county and what their issues are, because that will be very important. Thank you.
Okay. Kate, did you hear the question?
I didn't hear, I heard the last half of it, I think. So if you could repeat it for me, that would be great.
Okay. The county is governed by a charter that's up for review in 2025 by an elected group of citizens. How can the county commissioners best support the review process?
Well, that's a good question. I think one of the things that the commissioners can do is make themselves available to the members of the Charter Review Committee Commission, to discuss, where they see strengths and where they see challenges in how things are laid out. I think certainly in a couple of forums, we've heard some thoughts from Randy about where things can get tricky, which is not to say that we should totally restructure the county, but I think points to how important it is for the commissioners to be available for that input. I think also, maybe being supportive of or hosting, again, some public outreach for them, and just making connections where people may need them. I think that would be probably the most important thing, is being able to give feedback to what they think is working well. And if there are things issues that have come up that they're hearing from constituents that are charter-based concerns, I think, the commissioners do hear from people on a regular basis and may have information that would be really useful. So being aware of that and sharing it would be helpful.
Okay, thank you. Anders, you have the floor.
Previous to moving to Clallam County, I was born in King County, and I also spent some time residing in Snohomish County. My concern is, by way of comparison, I believe that the county commissioners should live in the unincorporated areas. The police and the roads, the city streets are handled by the city government. And in the unincorporated counties, we have the Public Works Department, we have the Sheriff's Department that are administratively taken care of by the county commissioners, ultimately by the people. So that's my number one concern right now. I would like to be more involved with the meetings of the county governance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the area of affordable housing and homelessness. How much of an impact, in your view, do short-term rentals have on the availability of long-term rental housing? And what would you do to implement your view if elected? We're starting with Randy.
I would like to see cooperation and public-private partnerships with the people in the contracting business. That I had a contracting business, electrical contracting business out of King County for several years. And so also working with Habitat, I'm familiar with what needs to happen. I also held a real estate broker's license. I would like to explore the possibility of co-op housing, some of it privately rented at market rates and others of it subsidized. And so this would be a partnership with the state and hopefully with the federal authorities that I think should be. I'd like to see a county employee dedicated to, who knows the ropes to make the path clear to helping our unhoused people. I don't call them homeless. I call them unhoused out of respect. Thank you.
We'll move on to Randy Johnson. Randy, I believe you're muted.
Sorry, if you wouldn't mind, repeat the question. Anders talked about unhoused or homeless and also housing, and I thought you were talking about rental units in the
Right.
county. Yes.
Right. The question is, how much of an impact, in your view, do short-term rentals have on the availability of long-term housing, rental housing, and what would you do to implement your view?
Let me start by saying that I believe we need more housing in this county, for that matter, in this whole country, because I think we're short 4 million houses in the whole of U.S., and certainly we're a microcosm of that need. So that's number one. But number two, after I get through with that, I take a look at, is there really an issue with people renting out their houses in the county relative to anything else? First of all, I can tell you it's very important, because what's generated from our rental units in the county are lodging tax, which pays for things like, guess what, our BMX track, our Olympic Discovery Trail, et cetera, comes from that. The B part of it is I've heard back from quite a few residents, some of whom are very, very dependent, and they have one rental unit and or in another case, 2 rental units, one's in Forks and one's towards Sequim, and they depend on that income for their living. And so I, again, have not come across where at least in the county, we need, again, more housing and all varieties, and there are a lot of ways to go there, but that's a different subject. But I don't think that it's an issue in the county, at least not from my perspective.
Okay. Kate, your thoughts?
Thank you. I mean, I think the data suggests that more short-term rentals leads to has a direct impact on available housing, and I think that makes sense. We recently regulated and are still working through some details of that at the city, and I know where we landed. Some people really liked and some people didn't. So we'll see how that plays out at the city level. But I think at the county level, what I think concerns me is outside investors coming in and buying up multiple properties and renting them as short-term rentals. I don't disagree that short-term rentals generate lodging tax, which has a lot of added value and allows us to have resources and assets that we wouldn't otherwise necessarily have. So I think there needs to be a balance. But I think, doing some kind of assessment at the county level would be worthwhile at this time, and considering whether or not, so there isn't a way within our state to block only people who are not residents from purchasing homes and using them as short-term rentals. But I think that is a real concern I have. When we look at property values in our area, they're going up, but they're still relatively inexpensive from an investment perspective. So I think looking at that and considering where we may need some regulation, I think it's probably appropriate to start looking at what kind of impact they're making and take some action on that.
Okay, thank you. One other housing related question. What steps would you take to expand access to affordable housing? Let's start with Anders.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
What steps would you take to expand access to affordable housing?
A lot of that comes through the zoning function, which I understand is a purview of the community development. So housing and zoning work together, and we want to make sure that there are opportunities for multi-family housing in the community, but at the same time, downzoning has problems too. Problems with transportation, simple problems with parking, and there's a lot of nuts and bolts that have to work together to make housing work. I don't have a quick and easy answer. If I did, I'd do it right away. I don't think that there is a quick and easy answer, but things such as zoning heavily impact the county's involvement in making housing affordable and desirable and livable for all of their residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Kate, you're next.
Thank you. I think one of the things that's important from my perspective is that our urban, we have the urban growth areas, we have the Growth Management Act, the goal of which is to keep our rural areas rural and our urban areas urban. And, if you come from Seattle, thinking of Port Angeles as urban seems a little counterintuitive potentially, but it is. So I think it's important for us for the county to continue to support the work of cities increasing density. And while I'm not, obviously this is a county race, my experience is at the city level. So I think it's important that just to qualify that's where many of my answers are coming from. So we've done a lot at the city level, and I think we've had good cooperation from the county, and I would like to see that continue. I think supporting the county can work together to convene and support partnerships with organizations in the community. We desperately need multifamily housing. And the other thing that I will mention in my short time left, with which Randy will probably also mention too, is opportunity funds. The city has the A Street Basin is a great example, which is a huge project to increase the capacity for housing on the west side of town, which would include the urban growth area, western urban growth area. And the county has funds that could potentially help us get to the finish line on that project, which would allow for an increase of about 1,400 units based on our recent analysis. So that's a concrete example, and I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you. Randy?
Thank you. We could all probably spend the next hour on this subject. So just very quickly, as I said earlier, there are 4+ million houses that were short in this country. When we looked at the state estimate for the next 20 years, they're saying we need another 6,000 homes in this county, of which the majority, more than the majority, need to be for those making 80% of the median income or less. So how does that happen? It doesn't happen, I'm afraid to say, from the market side at all. It has to happen with the county stepping up using their 1406 funds, their 1590 funds, and of course, opportunity funds. And how does that happen? Our Housing Solutions Committee, which we put together, please remember there are 3 commissioners, but we put that together, includes the cities, certainly the appropriate folks in the county, the nonprofits, the building industry, and the real estate industry. And they all have to come together. What has happened? We have 65 new units going in, some in the city of Port Angeles, which is through Peninsula Behavioral Health, some just outside that are in the urban growth area, which is Peninsula Housing Authority, some in Sequim. We saved a mortgage that we had for low-income housing that was taking place in Forks, was about to come due, and how do we save that? And we've done all the above, also worked with Minsky House and, of course, disabled veterans. So again, that committee is working, and we're in the process of making additional changes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to move on to natural resource management to make sure we cover all of the topics. First question, this would go to Randy first. What should be the driving values around timber resources located in Clallam County? Are they being managed in a sustainable way from your point of view?
Another lovely question that we could spend the next hour on, or certainly I could. So let's start, first of all, understanding. I assume you're talking about, well, timber resources. Are we talking about state lands? Are we talking about the Forest Service lands where you have matrix for spotted owls? Or are, for that matter, forest lands include private and also include an Olympic National Park? So I'm going to assume you're thinking about state timberlands, which in our county are about 150,000 acres. Of that, 90,000 acres came to the county through tax foreclosure, and the state manages that. Of those 90,000 plus or minus acres, almost 60% of those are perpetually set aside. What happens from when we harvest those timberlands that are called state transfer lands? That revenue goes to whom? It generates from $5 to $10 million every year, and a little bit goes to roads and the general fund, but most of it ends up going to our school districts and a multitude of other things. The other lands also go to help fund schools. Now, the question is, are they managed right? I would argue that they are doing a very good job. We have the most onerous forest practices of any state that I know of. That's number one. Number two, we certainly have not managed, in my mind, and we heard from our lands commissioners candidates, to take care of the fire risk. And that part needs to be stepped up. Thank you.
We'll give you the opportunity to expand on that in the next question. Let's see. Anders, you would be the next person responding.
Sorry to ask you to repeat. This is about forest properties and public lands. Would you mind repeating?
The timber resources that are being managed, do you think they're being managed in a sustainable manner? The timber resources located in Clallam County.
I'm not hearing your question very well. I apologize. Can you speak closer to the microphone? That helps.
Sure. What should be the driving values around timber resources located in Clallam County? Are they being managed in a sustainable way?
I happen to have children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. All of our decisions, all of our policies, and all of our applications of policies should be thought of in the long term. The state is a huge partner with state forest lands and private landowners, forest owners have controls about replanting and all these other things. If they work together, they're fine, and we'll have a better outcome in the future. I understand that some of the resources are divvied up in the various public entities. That needs to be managed and overseen on a continuing basis. So I'm glad that I live here, and I want to make Clallam County hospitable to everyone, and of course, especially my family. Thank you.
Kate?
Thank you. Well, I'll start by saying I'm not an expert when it comes to particularly timber, but I do think that I'll keep the, sounds like there might be a follow-up question, which Randy wasn't aware that might be coming. So just the specific answer to that question, I do have concerns with the way that timber is being managed now, where we're having large clear cuts. I recently heard that there are some tribes concerned about red cedar stands being cut down in clear cuts, and I am aware that there are a number of practices around the world and in the United States, forest practices that are more sustainable, create more jobs. And so I would certainly want to, again, I'm not an expert right now, but I think those are things worth exploring. We obviously, the city was recently involved in this, maybe follow-up question coming, but I think just in general, I think it's worth, I would want to know more about it, but I'm not super excited about what we're doing right now.
Okay. The follow-up question that I referred to is, could the relationship between the county and the State Department of Natural Resources be improved? And if so, how? Let's go ahead and start with Randy to follow up on your initial response.
Yes, thank you. And I should tell you, when I first became the commissioner, our then administrator said, "Oh, let's talk about the funding for next year." Well, it's up this year, so it'll be down next year, and that's all they know. Well, we meet quarterly with the DNR, and more importantly, we've recently formed something called the Revenue Advisory Committee, which includes, guess what? The hospital who receives funding, includes the school district administrators, includes the fire districts, and includes everyone who received funding. And again, the DNR, of course, informs us and lets us know what's happening so that everyone can understand. And I didn't get to address the fact that the DNR has a fiduciary duty to all generations, to answer Anders' kind of question, because that's absolutely correct. I would certainly like to know what was not sustainable about the DNR if someone thinks that's in fact true. And finally, I should also remind everyone that if you do a forest practice, the tribes are always involved in any forest practice that takes place. But again, we have reached out to DNR. We have formed committees, and I just think it's really important to keep that conversation going back and forth, not just directly with the county, because we receive a small portion of that, but with all the school districts and with everyone else that's involved, that is so important to what happens, including the jobs, by the way.
Great. Thank you. Anders, your thoughts?
As well as the state involvement with the DNR, forests, fishing, resources, and other parts of the puzzle. I think this is going to sound a little bit off question, but we need to remember that there are 2 Department of Corrections facilities in the county, and we need to keep a constant cooperation attitude and direction from the people through the commissioners on how we work with the people that administer the Department of Corrections in our county. I don't have any specific plans or concerns about DNR or forests? Thank you.
Kate, your response?
Sure. I agree with Randy. We could get into the weeds. We could all talk a lot more about this, and I can expand on my answer, but within a minute and a half, I will answer the question. My sense is that I would agree with Randy. I think the county has built a strong relationship with DNR, and they're working well with them. That's said from someone who, for the last 2 years, has been on the outside looking in, wishing that DNR would acknowledge that the city of Port Angeles is a government entity and should be responded to when there's outreach. So I think we did get some agreement from the commissioners, and I hope that we see that play out. And certainly, if I were in the role, I would make sure that happens. That when there are issues of concern, that the county is helping as a convener with the other organizations or governments of concern. And so I understand that tribes are included, and that's, of course, very important, and I appreciate that. And I think while the county and DNR relationship is good, I'm hopeful that the county and DNR will think more broadly when appropriate as they go forward.
Thank you. We're going to move on to a question on water. What are the biggest water issues facing the area, and what is the plan to address if you're elected? Ms. Dexter, you have 90 seconds.
All right. Well, a nice segue from our previous question. The city of Port Angeles, which is only one municipality, but a big one, the biggest one in the county. We rely on the Elwha River as our sole water source, and recently had some conversation around the trust land transfer application that some folks who are on tonight are maybe aware of, that I think were useful in terms of where there may be some opportunity for the county to engage. We are only one part of the whole county, but it is one area of significant concern as we see the shrinking glaciers, which feed the river. We're seeing water shortages earlier and earlier. And we know that people are going to continue moving to Port Angeles and Clallam County because it's an amazing place to live and it's beautiful. And so I think working with the cities in particular on where the county could provide support or partnership, advocacy, any of those things to help solve major issues. And I know the commissioners have been working on issues in Sequim and outside of Sequim. And so I think just continuing those partnerships and advocacy is where I'm going to end my answer.
Thank you. Anders, your thoughts?
I don't have anything to add to that, but thank you.
Okay. Randy?
Yeah. I'll respond to a couple of things Kate said at the very end. But first of all, I do believe water is just going to be critical. And as we see our climate change is one way or another, and as we go through a drought, there's no doubt that water, particularly here in the West Coast, is going to be very, very critical, I think, to all of us. So what's the county been doing? We've been working on, of course, the Dungeness Off-Channel Reservoir project, which would, of course, put water back into the Dungeness, help farmers and help people. And that's, of course, a very, very major project that we've been working on ever since I became a commissioner. And it's very important, of course, to capture the water as it flows in the winter into a reservoir, and then it can feed back and for farmers and everyone else back in summer, in our driest periods. The other thing that we have been working with is the PUD. Again, why? Because Carlsberg not only has the issue of water availability, they also have the issue of nitrates in the water. So we working with the PUD have drilled something called the Deep Well Project, the Carlsberg Deep Well Project. very important. Obviously getting it permitted through the Department of Ecology is going to take a while. But again, I think similar to what we've all mentioned, we need to form partnerships, and water is critical. And certainly we in the county have made it of our utmost priority. Thank you.
Um, I know that Randy already answered this question, so maybe we'll start with Kate. What's your view of the off-channel reservoir project for Sequim? Do you support that, and why or why not?
Well, I hate to say that I don't know enough about it yet,
Okay.
but it's certainly on my things to understand more fully. I mean, certainly conceptually it makes sense, but I also know that it's a lot more complicated than that, as most things are. So I will hope that if I make it past the general and you have us back, I'll have a great answer for you then.
Okay. Anders, any comment on that?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Anything else you'd like to add, Randy?
No, I certainly that's a very, very important thing where the citizens can weigh in. And when we held our first meeting, and the citizens, obviously, you're suddenly talking about a reservoir, and the whole issue of seismic capabilities or safety came up many, many times. And so because of that, we went back and took again look at some potential fault lines, have reoriented just so everyone knows, the off-channel reservoir to make sure that it was seismically safe, for as safe as anyone could imagine. And so we've certainly improved the first alternative that was looked at. And I appreciate that. And then the B part of it is, of course, you need to have land to do that. And we've been working with the DNR since I first became a commissioner to take into account the 400 acres that we're going to need to to put that reservoir into. So just to bring everyone up to date, and the DNR is about to transfer it to us. What else to say? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll turn to economics and development. Now that the mill is shutting down, how would you propose to mitigate the economic damage the closure will create? Kate, we'll start with you.
All right. First of all, I will say that the commissioners, during their work session last week, invited Colleen McAleer from the EDC and a number of us to discuss how we're going to, in the short-term answer to your question, which is how do we support the workers who are going to find themselves shortly unemployed. And so I can say that I fully support the actions that many organizations are taking. For example, having some HR outreach where there are open positions that people could fill, things of that nature. I also know that there is an additional meeting coming up about support for the mill and whether we may be able to actually keep them from shuttering. I don't know. And so I think those things are true. And then also long term, I think we all just need to sit down and think about where there might, if it's not able to reopen and it's not going to exist, are there opportunities that we can find in that? For example, it may free up money, free up power, things like that, where we may be able to work with Economic Development Council, to bring in new folks. Anyway, I think there are some opportunities if it doesn't reopen, and working together is how we're going to find those.
Thank you. Let's see, Randy, you have 90 seconds.
Thank you. It's terrible to have McKinley close. I don't know if people really understand. It's a recycled cardboard that comes in and is pulped and then goes out. And obviously we're at the end of the line relative to Halls. And what I've been told by the management of that company is they were losing about $1 million a month. My very great hope is that there might be some alternatives, including possible state financing to make their mill, improve their mill to where they're not losing money. And I think they would continue, but don't know if that's possible. back to the whole issue of Economic Development Council brought together a multitude of folks, including something I was on today, the Olympic Workforce Development Council, which works with all the people relative to retraining. We're having a job fair, which happens because of the Chamber of Commerce, which has been moved up. And of course, I sit in the Chamber Board too. And also the Center for Inclusive Entrepreneurship, et cetera, and the Small Business Development Council. All those are important in working together to see if there aren't other alternatives when we go forward. And certainly working with Peninsula College is just going to be critical, and there continue to be a lot of specialty trades that will make a lot of sense. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Anders, your thoughts?
The internet and remote work has significantly changed the economic picture for Washington and somewhat for Clallam County. Clallam has obviously focused on resource development, timber, fishing, and other resources. So to participate in the economic scene that we have today, we have to have an educated population supported by the public schools and by the college. Another aspect of that we have to focus on is developing internet capability, fiber optics to as many people as we practically can. I'm 78 years old, and this has been a major shift in our economic situation. So access to the internet and education of people so that employers have a base of people that they can employ here when there is an industry considering us. Thank you.
Thank you. This next question is a segue from the one that you just answered. What are your ideas for bringing living wage jobs to our area? And we'll start with Randy Johnson.
Thank you. Of course, there are a lot of people that work on living wage jobs coming to our area. That's why the county supports the Economic Development Council. Just think about someone like Brix Marine, who has come to here, and they certainly meet with other alternatives. The other very important thing when we think about living wage jobs is both the Center for Inclusive Entrepreneurship and the Small Business Development Association work with businesses. And the other, and I've got to say and emphasize this, being in the rural area, business retention and expansion. Those companies that are doing well here, any way we can help them expand and prosper is just vitally important. Other things, obviously, the continuing need for education, particularly with all the multitudes of different kinds of backgrounds. As I mentioned, Dr. Ames and Peninsula College, whether it be those things like welding projects. We now have a 2-year, because we're short foresters, we've got a 2-year program now for foresters, working also with Olympic Development Workforce Council for things such as truck driving. All those pay very good wages, and we need to keep working at that. So thank you.
Anders, what are your thoughts on this topic?
Well, I believe I answered your question before.
I think you did. Is there anything you'd like to add?
No,
Okay.
I would repeat what I said previously. It may be interesting to the viewers that I have some experience in lobbying the legislature on a couple of different issues. I know to some degree about how state government works. That has to be a basis for cooperation. It's understanding the systems that are in place and listening to the county citizens and residents and determining what proper goals are. for us to work together. I can't say that enough. If we work together, if we have common goals and hopefully somewhat common values in the things that we want as the outcome, then we're on the right path. Thank you.
Thank you. Kate?
Thank you. So I think living wage jobs certainly are important family wage jobs as we see our housing market continue to, well, everything getting more expensive. I think certainly continuing to support the work that Colleen McAleer is doing with the ex-EDC. I know I have had conversations, not recently, but in the past with folks who were really interested in attracting outdoor industry here. So people manufacturing equipment and such for the outdoors, which makes a lot of sense given where we are. LibTech, I guess, would be an example of one that already exists. I agree with Randy supporting entrepreneurship, helping people develop businesses when they're already here. So also retention and expansion. And I think, you know, in my work at the college, that's a great example where, so I think the thing I want to highlight from that is where folks in the community have said, hey, we recognize this need. So an example would be the OMC Foundation. The hospital has an incredible need for healthcare workers, and the best way for them to recruit is from people who are already here. And so the foundation has created a really generous scholarship fund that helps cover not just tuition and expenses related to the school, but the things that like childcare and transportation needs, so that folks can be successful in transitioning into a job that is a living wage, because I think that's a real barrier for some folks, is I see the end goal and I don't know how to get there. And so continuing to support collaborations like that is important.
Okay, thank you. We have time for one more question before we move to opening statements. The county's contract with Olympic Peninsula Humane Society to take in stray animals and animals in hoarder situations has been severed, and it's leaving a big gap for vulnerable animals. There's also an issue with backyard breeders in our county. How would you address this issue if elected? We'll start with Randy Johnson.
I don't need to address the issue if elected, because it's an issue right now today when we look at that. Obviously, as people probably know, I have 5 dogs as well as a whole lot of other stray animals that we have. I'm very concerned about them because I don't know exactly what the finances look like. Just so everyone knows, in the next 2 weeks, we're pulling together all the groups like WEG, et cetera, to find out exactly where we are. The county funded, obviously, the Humane Society to a fairly major extent, but I don't really know what the financial problem is, and I don't think anyone does, so I don't want to hypothecate what that might be, because we need to understand what the need is relative to, obviously, they're full up with one facility. Can they do the other facility? Do they need additional funding? What does that look like? But if we do anything like that, again, those are public resources and we need to have metrics. What are they going to do for us exactly when we get there? So again, we've already teed up that meeting. It's a critical issue. I certainly care about animals, and I can't say enough about that. And we've had a very good working relationship with the Humane Society before, but I know the sheriff about 2 weeks ago said things were kind of coming apart. And so I don't know all the things that are involved there. But we need to find that out, and we will do that very quickly before any of us are elected to county commissioner. So again.
All right, thank you. Anders, is there anything you'd like to add?
I am glad that we have Randy's experience in the job, and I hope to follow through with the things that are going on now for people and for animals. So no, I don't have anything to add.
Okay, thank you. Kate, your thoughts?
Sure. I don't want to assume that this question came in because we got word that they're closing the Bark House, but I expect that that's sort of the gist of it. So I know that the city is working on some outreach as well, and I think I do think if public funds are involved, it is important for there to be accountability from a financial perspective. I also think that They provide an incredibly valuable service, and we're seeing all kinds of issues. I follow a number of rescues, though I don't have a dog. I'm working really hard not to. And so I think there are a couple of issues around that. Part of the question was about backyard breeders. I think there may be some opportunity for considering regulation of that. I don't know what that looks like, and I haven't explored it at all, but it is something I have thought about as we see rescue after rescue desperate for funds and taking in hundreds of animals so that they're not euthanized at the shelter, particularly dogs. And so we're certainly at a critical point, and I think, have the governments of our county have a responsibility to the citizens to help ensure that there is some place for stray animals to go when there is a complaint. We don't have animal control anymore, but we have a contract with the Humane Society. So hoping to continue working on getting them solvent.
Okay, thank you. It's now time for the candidates' closing statements. They'll be presented in the opposite order of the opening statements, starting with Anders' closing statement. And that would be 2 minutes.
Thank you. There has to be a good mix in the way that the county is managed, in both in day-to-day and in long-range planning. And so the vision is very important. And like I said at the front end of this, listening to the residents of the county, taking their pulse and encouraging their input into policy and directions for the county. The county doesn't have a lot of control over economic development. And Randy previously said that the way that he sees it is to provide seed money for certain businesses. And that has to be done, but it also has to be done very carefully so that the county is not playing favorites between different companies, different industries, different people. That would be unfair. So my experience that I've mentioned before, I've lobbied the legislature, I've worked in housing, and I've kept a close ear to the people that I was responsible for in the Red Cross and in Habitat. So that's my vision, is to have the county running as a well-oiled machine, not micromanaging the departments, but following the will of the people. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Randy Johnson is next.
Yes, I thank you for putting this on. I appreciate it very much. And of course, I ask the voters to continue to honor me by hopefully electing me as the opportunity comes up, both at the primary and then at the general election. I've had proven leadership. We didn't have a CFO when I began as a county commissioner. We now do, and everyone knows exactly where our finances are. Our labor negotiations before, guess what? We're done with an outside firm, and we spend an additional $400,000 to $500,000. That doesn't take place anymore. Our budget, we have monthly reviews. I ask for metrics when we propose programs to see how we are performing. To go with that, I continue to have as my priorities things such as housing. We didn't have a housing solutions committee when we came forward. You've seen the progress we've made. Childcare. I've worked with both the Shore Pool and also with the YMCA about a potential of almost 200 different childcare spots, and continue to be involved in that. Veterans, our veteran service officers has taken and moved almost 100 people who were not receiving benefits or are now receiving benefits. I continue to emphasize that is a very important program to me. Conservation Futures, which also occurred since I've been county commissioner. We have a board now, and we're saving some of the iconic farmland that people used to think about being developed into 5-acre lots. Well, it's now being farmed, and the farmers are able to acquire that at a reasonable farm value price. And finally, fiscal integrity is important. Our county has no long-term debt to speak of, and I consider that really important. Thank you.
Thank you. Kate?
Thank you. Again, I will echo others and say thank you for having us this evening. It's been a pleasure to be here. It's always challenging to give a good answer in 90 seconds. But I appreciate that it gives us an opportunity to answer more questions. So thank you. I will just end by saying that I, of course, am asking for your vote, and that over the last 6 years, I have been dedicated to listening to constituents and providing a calm, level-headedness during difficult community issues. I have worked on to pass legislation in the best interest of the community as a whole. As mayor, I helped Port Angeles weather the pandemic and voted to provide pandemic relief to businesses, individuals, and nonprofits. Coming out of the pandemic, I have been a proponent of increasing childcare, developing meaningful solutions to the housing crisis, supporting first responders, and working to support local agencies responding to the opioid crisis. These are issues that affect everyone in Clallam County, and our county deserves leadership, direction, and creativity to ensure that we can all move forward together. Both as mayor and in my personal life, I believe that working collaboratively strengthens our community. I've helped strengthen partnerships with local tribal governments, worked with partners at the county, and served as a member of nonprofit boards. I will bring my collaborative leadership style and ability to build partnerships to the county commission. I believe that Clallam County deserves leadership that is actively working towards building collaborative partnerships and using creative ideas to make our county work for everyone and that no one is left behind. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to this focused policy discussion, and thank you, candidates, for your thoughtful answers. These candidates have taken the bold act of running. Now it's our turn to vote. If you're not registered to vote, we encourage you to go to votewa.gov and register either online or by mail through July 29th or in person at the courthouse, the county courthouse, until August 6th. If you're not sure about your voter registration, you can check it on the votewa.gov website. If you want more information on candidates, we encourage you to visit vote411.org to read candidates' written responses to questions. Ballots will be mailed out July 17th and can be mailed in or placed in one of the many county drop boxes. Election day is August 6th, so please be sure to fill out your ballot and get it either to the drop box or in the mail. We're asking everyone to vote, then talk to everyone you know about registering and/or voting. As noted, the form has been recorded and a link will be posted to the website for the League of Women Voters, Clallam County, in a few days. Thank you again to our candidates for participating in tonight's forum. Good evening, everyone.